Rain was hammering down on the streets that Thursday night when she walked through the door. David Chen had owned this bar for nearly 6 years, and in that time, he'd learned to read people. You had to in this business. You could tell who was celebrating, who was drowning their sorrows, and who was running from something. She was definitely running. The clock on the wall showed 11:15. Most of the usual crowd had already left. Just a couple regulars nursing their drinks in the corner booth, and old Mr. Thompson at his usual spot by the window. David was wiping down the counter, thinking about closing early, when the door opened and she walked in. She was maybe 25, 26 years old, wearing an expensive-looking black dress, the kind you'd see at fancy downtown events. But something was off. No coat despite the weather outside. No umbrella. Her hair was wet, mascara slightly smudged around her eyes. And those eyes, that's what caught his attention. They weren't sad exactly. They were fierce, determined, like someone who'd just made a decision they couldn't take back. She walked straight to the bar and sat down on the middle stool. Her hands were shaking a little as she placed them on the counter. David grabbed a clean glass and walked over. "Rough night?" he asked, keeping his tone light. She looked up at him and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You could say that. Can I get a whiskey?" "The good stuff, whatever you recommend." David nodded and reached for the top shelf. He poured her 2 fingers of 18-year-old single malt and slid it across. She picked it up without hesitation and took a long sip. Not the way most people drank expensive whiskey, but he wasn't going to judge. "Starting over," she said quietly, more to herself than to him. "That's what I'm doing. Starting completely over." David had heard variations of this before. Breakups, job losses, family drama. He'd learned that sometimes people just needed to talk, and sometimes they needed silence. He started to move away to give her space, but she spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" Her voice was stronger now, more focused. "Sure," David said, leaning against the back counter. "What's the worst decision you ever made that turned out to be the best thing that happened to you?" That caught him off guard. It wasn't the usual bar small talk. He thought about it for a moment, really thought about it. "I walked away from a business opportunity 5 years ago," he finally said. "Would have made me a lot of money, but I would have had to compromise everything I believed in. Everyone thought I was crazy. My ex-wife certainly did. She left me because of it, actually." The woman nodded slowly, processing this. "But you don't regret it?" "Not for a second. I might not be rich, but I can look at myself in the mirror every morning. That's worth more than money." She took another sip of her whiskey and he noticed a massive engagement ring on her finger. The diamond had to be at least 3 carats. She caught him looking and twisted the ring around her finger unconsciously. "Expensive prison," she muttered. David raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She'd talk if she wanted to. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. She finished her drink and asked for another. This time she sipped it more slowly, savoring it. She kept checking her phone, her expression getting more tense each time. Finally, she powered it off completely and shoved it in her purse. "Do you believe people can change?" she asked suddenly. "Like, really change? Not just say they will, but actually do it." David considered the question. "I think people can change if they want to badly enough. But they have to want it for themselves, not for someone else. That's the difference." She nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. "I've spent my whole life doing what other people wanted. My father, my teachers, my fiancé." She said that last word with bitterness. "I never got to decide anything for myself. Not my major in college, not my career, not even who I was supposed to marry." "That sounds exhausting," David said simply. "You have no idea." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "And the worst part? Everyone thinks I have it all. The money, the perfect life, the fairy tale engagement. They see the surface and think I should be grateful. But gratitude doesn't work like that," David said. "You can be grateful and still unhappy. You can have everything and still feel empty." She looked at him with something like surprise. "Exactly. God, nobody gets that. They just tell me how lucky I am, how many people would love to have my problems." One of the regulars came up to settle his tab, and David excused himself to handle it. When he came back, she was staring at her reflection in the mirror behind the bar, but it seemed like she was looking through it rather than at it. "I did something tonight," she said quietly. "Something I can't undo, and I'm either going to regret it for the rest of my life, or it's going to save my life. I don't know which yet." David didn't know what to say to that, so he just listened. My father's a businessman. Very successful. Very powerful. He's built his whole empire on making deals, on seeing opportunities and taking them. And I realized recently that I'm just another deal to him. Another opportunity. She paused, running her finger along the rim of her glass. My fiancé works with him. Their companies were merging and I was part of the package. Like furniture. Or a signing bonus. Did you confront them? David asked gently. She shook her head. No, I just left. Right in the middle of the engagement party. Everyone was there. Business partners, society people, journalists. And I just walked out, got in a cab and told the driver to take me somewhere. Anywhere. We drove around for an hour before I saw your place and asked him to stop. David let out a low whistle. That must have caused quite a scene. Oh, I'm sure it did. She smiled, and this time it was genuine. I'm sure my father is losing his mind right now. And my fiancé is probably more worried about the business implications than about me. Which kind of proves my point, doesn't it? What are you going to do now? David asked. She finished her second drink and set the glass down carefully. I honestly don't know. For the first time in my life, I have no plan. No schedule. No expectations. And it's terrifying and exciting at the same time. She opened her purse and pulled out a black credit card, the kind that had no limit. She paid for her drinks and then paused, looking at David thoughtfully. She pulled out 5 $100 bills and laid them on the counter. For listening, she said, and for not judging. That's too much, David protested. Consider it an investment in good karma. She stood up, steadier than he expected. Thank you for tonight. You didn't fix anything, but you didn't make it worse either. That's rare. She walked to the door and David called after her. Hey, are you going to be okay? Do you need me to call anyone? She turned back and gave him a real smile this time. I'm going to figure that out, but thank you for asking. And then she was gone, disappearing into the rain like she'd never been there at all. David stood there for a moment, staring at the door. Then he looked down at the $500 on the counter. Something about the whole interaction left him unsettled. Not in a bad way exactly. More like the feeling you get when you know something important just happened, but you don't quite understand what yet. He finished closing up the bar, checking the locks twice like he always did. As he climbed the stairs to his apartment above the bar, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Those fierce eyes, that determination mixed with fear. He hoped she'd be okay wherever she was going. The next morning, David woke up to his phone buzzing with news alerts. He grabbed it groggily and glanced at the screen. His heart stopped. The headline read, Billionaire's daughter vanishes during engagement party. And there, right below it, was her photo. Her name was Catherine Monroe. Her father, Richard Monroe, owned half the tech companies in the city. Her fiancé, Derek Ashton, was a venture capitalist worth millions. And she'd been missing for 12 hours. David sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. The news article said the family was desperately worried and offering a reward for information. Derek was quoted saying he had no idea what could have prompted this, and just wanted her home safe. David knew he should call the police. Tell them she'd been at his bar, that she seemed okay, at least physically. But something stopped him. Her words kept echoing in his head. I'm just another deal to him. Another opportunity. His phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Hello? Is this David Chen, owner of the Lighthouse Bar? An official-sounding voice. Yes, that's me. This is Detective Williams. I need to ask you some questions about a missing person who was last seen in your vicinity. And just like that, David's quiet life got a whole lot more complicated. The detective arrived within 30 minutes. David had barely had time to make coffee and get dressed properly. Detective Williams was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional. She showed him Catherine's photo, which he didn't need to see. That face was already burned into his memory. She was here last night, David admitted. Came in around 11:15, stayed maybe 45 minutes, then left. Did she say where she was going? No, she didn't mention any plans. Did she seem distressed? Under the influence. Coerced in any way? David thought carefully about his answer. She seemed like someone who just made a big decision. Scared maybe, but determined. Not coerced. The detective took notes, asked more questions about what Catherine had ordered, who else was in the bar, whether anyone had bothered her. David answered everything honestly, but he kept the details of their conversation vague. Something told him that Catherine's words were meant to be private. After the detective left, David opened the bar as usual. Within an hour, 2 other people had come by asking questions. One claimed to be a friend of the family. The other said he was a reporter. David told them both the same thing he'd told the police and sent them away. But he couldn't stop thinking about Catherine. Where had she gone? Was she safe? Did she have anyone she could trust? 3 days passed. The news coverage intensified. Catherine's face was everywhere. Her father gave tearful interviews. Derek held a press conference pleading for her return. The reward climbed to $100,000. David noticed something, though. In all the coverage, no one really talked about Catherine as a person. They talked about her father's anguish, Derek's worry, the impact on business deals, the social embarrassment. But nobody asked why a woman with everything might choose to disappear. On the 4th day, everything changed. It was Tuesday afternoon, typically slow. David was doing inventory in the back when he heard a knock on the rear entrance. Nobody used that door except deliveries, and he wasn't expecting any. He opened it cautiously. Catherine stood there, but she looked completely different. Gone was the expensive dress. She wore jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low. No makeup. She looked younger somehow and more real. "Please," she said quickly. "I need help. I have nowhere else to go." Every logical part of David's brain screamed at him to call the police. This woman was the subject of a missing person investigation. Her family was going crazy looking for her. There was a massive reward. And here she was asking him to hide her. "Please," she repeated, and he saw genuine fear in her eyes now. Not the determined kind from before. Real terror. David stepped aside and let her in. He led her upstairs to his apartment, checking to make sure nobody had seen them. His place was small, just a living room, bedroom, bathroom, and tiny kitchen. Nothing fancy, but it was clean and private. Catherine sat on his couch and pulled off the cap. Her hair was shorter now, cut into a simple bob. "I know this is crazy," she said. "I know you have every reason to turn me in. But I need you to understand something. I'm not missing. I left. Deliberately." "Catherine." "My name is Katie," she interrupted. "Catherine is what my father calls me. What everyone in that world calls me. I've always been just Katie to myself." "Okay, Katie," David said, sitting in the chair across from her. "You need to explain what's going on. The whole city is looking for you." And so she told him everything. The story took over an hour. She explained how her father had arranged her entire life like pieces on a chessboard. The private schools, the specific college major, the internship at his company. When she'd wanted to study art, he'd told her it wasn't practical. When she dated a teacher, he'd gotten the man fired and transferred to another state. Then came Derek. Her father and Derek had been planning a business merger for 2 years. The engagement was part of the deal. Derek's venture capital firm would absorb 3 of her father's smaller companies. In exchange, Derek would gain access to her father's network and eventually her trust fund. "Wait," David interrupted. "Your trust fund? How does he get access to that?" Katie's expression darkened. "That's the part that made me run. I found emails between them. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent after the wedding. They had a doctor lined up, ready to testify that I was having severe anxiety and depression, that I couldn't manage my own affairs. Derek would become my legal guardian and my father would manage the money for my own good." David felt sick. That's not legal, is it?" "It is if you have the right lawyers and the right doctors willing to lie," Katie said bitterly. "My father has both. He's been building a case for months. Every time I questioned the wedding, every time I seemed unhappy, he made sure people noticed. He told family friends I was struggling. He suggested to people that I might need professional help. He was laying groundwork. And Derek went along with this?" "Derek suggested it." Katie's voice was flat. "I found the email where he first brought it up. He said I was a complication that needed to be managed. Those were his actual words." David ran his hand through his hair. This was so much bigger than he'd thought. "Katie, if this is true, you need to go to the police." "Not hide in my apartment and tell them what?" she asked. "That my billionaire father and his billionaire business partner are conspiring against me?" "With what proof?" "The emails are on my father's private server. I took photos with my phone, but any lawyer would say I doctored them. It's their word against mine, and I'm the one who ran away from my engagement party like a crazy person." She made air quotes around the words. My father has already been telling people I'm unstable. He's controlling the narrative. David saw her point, but he also saw the massive problem they were facing. So what's your plan? Hide forever? No, Katie said firmly. I need to find a way to prove what they're doing. Real proof. Something undeniable. But I need time and I need help. I know I'm asking a lot. I know I'm putting you in a difficult position. If you want me to leave, I'll understand. David looked at her sitting there on his couch. She'd taken off her hoodie and he could see how thin she'd gotten. There were dark circles under her eyes. This wasn't some spoiled rich girl playing games. This was someone genuinely trapped. He thought about his ex-wife, how she'd manipulated him, made him doubt himself, isolated him from his friends, how trapped he'd felt in that marriage, unable to see the way out until it was almost too late. He'd had to rebuild his entire life from scratch. You can stay, he heard himself say, but we're going to be smart about this. No going out during the day, no phone calls, and we're going to figure out a real plan, not just hiding. Katie's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. You have no idea what this means. I might regret this, David muttered. In fact, I'm pretty sure I will. But I also know what it feels like to be trapped by someone who's supposed to care about you. Over the next few days, they fell into an uneasy routine. Katie stayed upstairs during business hours. At night, after David closed the bar, she'd come down and help him clean. They'd talk for hours, sharing their stories. She told him about her childhood, about never being allowed to make her own choices. About the therapist her father had sent her to, who'd prescribed medication she didn't need and told her that her feelings of being controlled were rebellion issues. David told her about his marriage, about the woman he'd thought loved him but really just loved his ambition, about choosing happiness over money and having everyone call him crazy. They found they had a lot in common, despite coming from completely different worlds. They both knew what it felt like to have people make decisions for them, to have their feelings dismissed, to be told they should be grateful when they felt suffocated. One week in, Katie was washing glasses while David counted the register. She was talking about her mother, who'd passed away when Katie was 12. She would have understood, Katie said softly. She was the only one who ever really listened to me. David looked up and saw the pain in her face. Without thinking, he walked over and hugged her. She tensed for a moment, then relaxed, resting her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that for a long moment, and David realized with a start that he was developing feelings for her. Real feelings, not just sympathy or protectiveness. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she listened when he talked about his dreams of maybe opening a restaurant someday, the way she saw him as a person, not just a bartender or a means to an end. Katie pulled back and looked up at him. For a moment he thought she might kiss him. Part of him wanted her to, but they both stepped away at the same time, the spell broken. Sorry, David said awkwardly. Don't be, Katie replied. But this is complicated. I'm still technically engaged. I'm hiding from my family, and you're the only person I can trust right now. I don't want to mess that up by rushing into something. You're right, David agreed, even though part of him was disappointed. Let's just focus on keeping you safe and figuring out what to do next. But the moment had changed something between them. They both felt it. The next day everything got more complicated. One of David's regular customers, an older woman named Helen, mentioned that someone had been sitting in a car across the street for the past 2 days. Just sitting there watching the bar. David's heart sank. He went upstairs and told Katie. They're looking for me, she said, her face pale. Derek probably hired an investigator. He told me once that's what his firm does when they need information on potential investments. They dig until they find something useful. So what do we do? David asked. Katie was quiet for a long moment. Then her expression changed. The fierce determination from that first night came back. We stop hiding and start fighting. I have proof of what they're planning. It's not enough on its own, but if we can get them to admit it on record, if we can make them slip up. That sounds dangerous, David said. Probably, Katie agreed. But I didn't come this far to give up now. I need your help, though. And I need to call someone I trust. Who? Her name is Lisa Chen. She's a lawyer, one of the few friends I have who isn't connected to my father's world. We went to college together. I think she'll help us, David hesitated. Every instinct told him this was getting too big, too risky. But he looked at Katie and saw someone who'd finally found her courage. How could he tell her to give that up? Okay, he said. Make the call. But we're going to plan this carefully. No rushing in, no taking stupid risks, Katie smiled. Deal. She borrowed David's phone and called Lisa, explaining everything in quick, hushed tones. Lisa agreed to meet them the next night after the bar closed. She said she had a contact in the FBI who specialized in fraud cases. If they could get solid evidence, there might be a way forward. For the first time since that rainy night, David felt like maybe, just maybe, this could actually work out. But first, they had to get through whatever came next. And they both knew Derek and Richard Monroe weren't going to make it easy. Lisa arrived exactly at midnight, 3 days after Katie's phone call. She was David's age, sharp-featured with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She came through the back entrance, carrying a leather briefcase and looking around nervously. This feels like a spy movie, she muttered as David locked the door behind her. Katie rushed down from upstairs and hugged her friend tightly. Thank you for coming. Thank you for believing me. Of course I believe you, Lisa said, pulling back to look at Katie. I've watched your father control your life since we were 18. I've seen the way Derek looks at you, like you're a business asset instead of a person. The only surprise is that it took you this long to run. They sat around one of the bar tables and Katie showed Lisa everything she had. The photos of emails on her phone, screenshots of financial documents, text messages between Derek and her father discussing the Katie situation. Lisa examined each piece carefully, making notes on a legal pad. Okay, Lisa said finally. This is good. It shows intent, but it's not enough for criminal charges. A good lawyer would argue these could be faked or taken out of context. What we need is one of them admitting to the plan on record. Audio or video that can't be disputed. How do we get that? David asked. Katie needs to go back, Lisa said simply. Absolutely not, David said immediately. That's too dangerous. I agree it's risky, Lisa continued. But think about it. Right now they think Katie had a breakdown and ran away. They're scared she'll go public, but they also think she's vulnerable and alone. If she goes back and acts like she's ready to cooperate, ready to get help, they'll let their guard down. Katie was nodding slowly. She's right. If I show up saying I realized I overreacted, that I want to make things right, they'll believe me. Derek always said I was too emotional to think clearly. He'll assume I came to my senses. This is crazy, David said, but he could see the logic. And dangerous. What if they don't believe you? What if they lock you up somewhere? That's where you come in, Lisa said, turning to David. Katie wears a wire, one of those tiny recording devices, and you stay nearby, monitoring everything. If anything goes wrong, you call the police immediately. I'll also have my FBI contact on standby. The FBI is willing to do this? David asked, surprised. My contact, Agent Rodriguez, has been building a case against Derek's firm for securities fraud. Nothing solid yet, but if we can prove he's involved in conspiracy to commit fraud and coercion, it opens up his whole operation for investigation. She's very interested. Over the next 2 days, they planned every detail. Lisa arranged for the recording equipment through her FBI contact. They decided Katie would call her father and ask to meet for dinner at his estate. Family only. She'd wear a wire and try to get him and Derek to discuss their plans openly. David hated every part of this plan, but he couldn't deny it was their best option. Still, watching Katie prepare to go back into that world made his stomach turn. The night before the dinner, after Lisa had left, David and Katie sat in his apartment. Neither could sleep. They'd been living in close quarters for almost 2 weeks now, and the initial awkwardness had given way to easy comfort. David knew the way she took her coffee. Katie knew exactly which floorboard creaked in his apartment. They'd developed their own rhythm, their own silent communication. Are you scared? David asked. Terrified, Katie admitted, but also angry. I keep thinking about all the years I let them control me. All the times I knew something was wrong but talked myself out of my own feelings. I'm done being that person. You were never that person, David said. You were just surviving. There's a difference. Katie looked at him and something passed between them. That same charge from the night they'd almost kissed. But this time neither pulled away. Katie leaned over and kissed him gently. When they broke apart, David rested his forehead against hers. Terrible timing, he murmured. The worst, Katie agreed. But also kind of perfect. Like, if I'm going to do this scary thing tomorrow, at least I know what I'm fighting for. Not just my freedom, but the chance to actually live my life with someone who sees me as a person. They spent that night talking until dawn, not about the plan or the danger, but about everything else. About places they wanted to travel, books they loved, embarrassing childhood stories. All the normal things they hadn't had time for while dealing with the chaos. As the sun started to rise, Katie said quietly, "If something goes wrong tomorrow, I need you to know something. This past couple of weeks, hiding in your apartment, washing dishes in your bar, it's been the happiest I've been in years, maybe ever, because I got to just be myself. Nothing's going to go wrong," David said, trying to sound confident. "Lisa's plan is solid. Agent Rodriguez will be close by, and I'll be right there listening to everything." But even as he said it, he felt the weight of all the things that could go wrong. The next evening, Lisa arrived with the recording equipment. It was smaller than David expected, barely larger than a button, with a tiny microphone that would clip inside Katie's shirt collar. The receiver was about the size of a phone, with earbuds for David to monitor the audio. Lisa helped Katie get ready. She'd brought clothes, the kind Katie used to wear, an expensive blouse, tailored pants, subtle makeup. David watched Katie transform back into Catherine Monroe, and it was like watching someone put on armor. Her posture changed. Her expression became more guarded. By the time Lisa finished, the woman standing in front of him looked like the person from the news reports, not the woman he'd gotten to know. "Remember," Lisa coached, "you're apologetic but not weak. You had a moment of panic, but now you realize you overreacted. You want to fix things. Let them do most of the talking. Ask gentle questions. How do we move forward? What do you think I should do?" Let them lay out their plan. Katie nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I'll be in a car 2 blocks away," Lisa continued. "Agent Rodriguez will be 3 blocks out. David will be monitoring from across the street. If at any point you feel unsafe, use the code phrase we discussed. Say, 'I need some fresh air.' That's our signal to move in." David drove Katie to within a block of her father's estate. The house was massive, set back from the road behind iron gates. He parked where he could see the front entrance and handed Katie the earbuds. "You can do this," he said, squeezing her hand. "I know," Katie replied, but he could see her hands shaking. She got out of the car and walked toward the gate. David watched her ring the bell, saw someone answer through the intercom, watched the gate swing open. She disappeared up the long driveway. David put in his earbuds and heard Katie's breathing slightly too fast. Then a door opening, her father's voice loud and emotional. "Catherine! Oh, thank God, you're safe." The sound of an embrace. Her father was crying. For a moment, David wondered if they'd gotten this all wrong. The man sounded genuine. "I know," Katie said. "And you're right. I think I do need help. I've been so anxious lately, so confused. Maybe talking to someone would be good." "More than talking," Derek interjected. "Katie, these episodes are getting worse. Running away from your own engagement party? That's serious. We think you need intensive treatment. Somewhere you can rest and get better." David's hands clenched. Here it came. "Intensive treatment?" Katie asked, sounding uncertain. "What does that mean?" "There's a facility in Switzerland," her father said. "Beautiful place, very private. You'd stay there for a few months, work with therapists, get your head straight, and Derek and I would handle your business affairs while you're recovering. Take the pressure off you. You'd handle my affairs?" Katie repeated slowly. "Just temporarily," Derek said quickly. "Until you're well. Your father and I have been discussing it. With the right legal framework, we can manage your trust fund, make sure all your needs are met. You wouldn't have to worry about anything except getting better." There was a long pause. David held his breath. "The right legal framework," Katie said carefully. "You mean declaring me incompetent?" The silence that followed was deafening. David could practically hear the tension through the wire. "That's a harsh word," her father said finally. "We prefer to think of it as protecting you. You're not well, Catherine. Surely you can see that. Healthy people don't run away from their own engagement parties. People who are being controlled do," Katie said, her voice stronger now. "People who realize they're being used as a business deal do." "Catherine, you're being paranoid," Derek snapped. "This is exactly the kind of irrational thinking we're talking about. You need help." "I found the emails," Katie said quietly. "Between you and Dad, all of them. The plan to have me declared incompetent. The doctor you already lined up. The lawyer who specializes in guardianship cases. I know everything." Another long silence. Then her father's voice, completely different now. Cold. "Where are those emails, Catherine?" "Somewhere safe," Katie replied. Somewhere you can't get to them. You don't understand what you're doing, Derek said, and David heard movement. Give me your phone, now. I don't have it, Katie said, and it wouldn't matter if I did. The evidence is already backed up. Multiple places. If anything happens to me, it all becomes public. David's phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Rodriguez says that's enough. We're moving in. Through the earbuds, David heard Derek's voice rising. You ungrateful little girl. Do you have any idea how much I've invested in this relationship? How much your father and I stand to lose if you blow this up? There it is, Katie said, and David could hear the satisfaction in her voice. You never loved me. You never even liked me. I was just an investment to you. You were an opportunity, Derek corrected coldly, and your father agreed you were worth the effort. Shame you turned out to be more trouble than you're worth. Derek, shut up, her father hissed. But Derek was beyond controlling now. You know what? Fine, you want to play this game? Your father owns half the judges in this city. You think anyone will believe you over us? We'll have you committed so fast. The sound of a door bursting open. FBI, nobody move! Chaos erupted through the earbuds, shouting multiple voices. David jumped out of the car and ran toward the house. The gates were still open. He sprinted up the driveway and found the front door ajar. Inside, Agent Rodriguez and 3 other agents had Derek and Richard Monroe against the wall. Lisa was there too, recording everything on her phone. And in the middle of it all stood Katie, pulling the wire off her collar, her hands shaking but her face triumphant. She saw David and a genuine smile broke across her face. We got them, she said. We actually got them. Derek was screaming about lawyers and lawsuits. Richard Monroe stood silent, his face ashen. Agent Rodriguez was reading them their rights. Lisa walked over to David and Katie. That wire caught everything. The coercion, the admission of fraud, the threats. Along with the evidence Katie already had, this is enough to bring charges. Real charges. Katie turned to her father, who was staring at her with an expression between rage and disbelief. I told you I was done being controlled, she said quietly. I meant it. As the agents led Derek and her father away, Katie's legs gave out. David caught her, holding her up as she started to cry. Not sad tears, but the kind that come when you've been holding yourself together for too long and finally let go. You did it, David whispered. It's over. It's not over yet, Lisa said gently. There's still going to be a trial. Lots of legal proceedings. This is just the beginning. But for now, in this moment, Katie had her freedom, and that was everything. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. True to Lisa's warning, the legal proceedings were complicated and exhausting. But the recording from that dinner, combined with the documents Katie had saved, built a strong case. Derek Ashton was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and